Ordinance of estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. I'm joined to my left by Councilwoman Felicia Porter, 10th District, and to my right by Councilwoman Danny McCray, 2nd District member of the committee. On behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott is Sophia G., as well as Nina Themlis and Natasha Mehew. On behalf of Council President Nick Mosby is Nate Poole and Matt Stegman. To my immediate right is staff to the committee, Matt Peters. We are here for Department of Human Resources. I'm going to be turning the gavel over to Chairwoman McCray. Director Herbert, if you could please introduce the members of your team. Just need a name and what their position is, and then get into your presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and Madam Chair. With me today, I have our Deputy Director, Tanya Brinkley, our Assistant Deputy of Administration, Lindsay Wines, Joanne Ashton, who is the Chief of Recruitment and Shared Services, Ray Gulhar, who is the Chief of Employee Benefits, and Julie Colucci, who is our Administrative Officer. That's everyone. Madam Chair, did you want me the Labor Commissioner to introduce as well? But I think we present jointly. But we do. Or you go. We go right after each other. In the past, we've introduced and then we've done things sort of together.
That works directly.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Deborah Moore Carter, Labor Commissioner for the City of Baltimore. And with me, I have Yvette Brown, Director of Labor and Employee Relations, and Veronica Jones, who's the Deputy Labor Commissioner. Thank you.
With that, I will jump right into our slide presentation. The Department of Human Resources is broken down into 7 strategic operational offices that are broken down into 4 service numbers. Those operational offices include policy and compliance, recruitment and shared services, employee benefits, classification and compensation, HRIS or HR Tech, learning and development, and the Employee Assistance Program, better known as EAP. Service 770, or DHR's Office of Administration, is responsible for the agency's overall performance and management, fiscal oversight, employment policy development and implementation, employment law and regulatory compliance, strategic communications and civil service commission administration and rulemaking, as well as HRIS operations. Our fiscal year 23 budget is a CLS budget with modest increases to budget contract lines to accurately reflect the inflated costs of our existing contracts. Of note for fiscal year 23, we will host the city's first Employee Recognition Award in the late summer, which will recognize an Employee of the Year, a Manager of the Year, an Executive of the Year, and a Team of the Year. Service 771 is our Employee Benefits Administration service. This service, again, is responsible for administering the city's health and welfare benefits for all active employees, retirees, and their dependents, according to the terms and conditions of the city's negotiated memoranda of understanding covering medical plans, dental plans, life insurance, prescription drug plans, vision, flexible spending accounts, and unemployment insurance. This service also administers a citywide health and wellness program and employee assistance program. It's worth noting under this service that in fiscal year 22, EAP was able to extend office hours from 8:30 to 4:30 to 8:30 to 6:30 by making modest schedule changes and staffing changes within the office to accommodate employees who needed those services beyond traditional working hours. EAP also offers a monthly grief and loss presentation virtually to support all employees, and that presentation is also available after work hours to those employees who are experiencing grief or loss. Service 772, which is the Civil Service Management. This service is comprised of the Office of Classification and Compensation and the Office of Shared Services and Recruitment. The Office of Classification and Compensation is responsible for classifying occupational groups, developing job specifications, establishing compensation levels for the positions that comprise Baltimore City's workforce. We conduct position and organization and compensation studies. Within the Office of Shared Services and Recruitment, the Shared Services team provides HR guidance and support to agencies that either do not have HR support or that need additional support. The recruitment team standardizes the administrative life cycle for position requisitions and candidate selection criteria, including entrance level exams for our public service employees. For fiscal year 23, Service 772 is a CLS budget. There are no significant changes. Service 773 is our learning and development service. This service incorporates the highest continuing education and training operational standards to ensure uniform development, strategic implementation, and facilitation within a wide range of learning opportunities to meet the needs of Baltimore City's diverse workforce, to align with agency business objectives and support the mayoral initiatives. The office provides learning paths that enable targeted learning for professional development, IT and software, management and supervision, leadership development, training on city policies, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other learning paths. These trainings are provided through both in-class and virtual learning environments. Fiscal year 23 is a CLS budget. This is the second year that our learning and development is fully funded, meaning that all of those core trainings that are provided to the agencies are provided at no cost to the agency. They are funded through the DHR's budget. Of note for fiscal year 23, one of the things that I did want to highlight is that DHR's Office of Learning and Development launched a new leadership development learning path in fiscal year 22. We opened that to a limited number of agencies as we rolled out, and we will continue in an expanded format in fiscal year 23. That leadership pathway is a comprehensive training comprised of 3 multi-step learning paths. Each path includes theoretical leadership foundations that are provided through our self-paced online learning and LMS system, and then practical application training is taught through instructor-facilitated sessions. And so that concludes all of our services, and we would defer at this time if there are any questions.
Okay, so first thank you, Director. So I want to welcome Councilwoman Odette Ramos, Councilman Robert Stokes, Councilman Yitzi Schleifer, and Councilman Mark Conway today. Were we going to go into your presentation next? We can actually table those questions. Were you ready to give your presentation since we're doing this jointly? Okay, so we're going to hear from our Labor Commissioner. She's going to provide her presentation, and then we're going to take all of the questions at one time for both.
Good afternoon, everyone. Deborah Moore Carter, Labor Commissioner. My office is responsible for labor and employee relations. What that means is that as Labor Commissioner, I am the mayor's representative on all negotiations with the various bargaining units. We are also responsible for contract administration, which means that we conduct grievance hearings at the 3rd or 4th step. It depends on the bargaining unit. And we also are responsible, in addition to the Civil Service Commission, with doing termination hearings, suspensions of 30 days or more, and involuntary demotions. We also have labor management committees. We work with the unions and agencies to discuss workplace issues of relevance and importance. We will be having a meeting, for example, with the Department of Public Works to talk about various aspects in the Bureau of Water and Wastewater. So our service description, the Office of the Labor Commissioner, the service conducts Contract negotiations with 7 unions. We meet and confer with MAPS, the Managerial and Professional Society of Baltimore. We are negotiating wages, benefits, and other terms and conditions of employment. We oversee the administration of the Memorandum of Understanding and studies, and we make recommendations for the establishment, revision, or correction of city policies and procedure and regarding labor management matters. Recently, we are also responsible now, when I talked about the bargaining units, we are also now responsible for negotiations with the Sheriff's Office, and we started negotiations with them. That is FOP Large Number 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Colleagues, I'm going to start with questions. And my first question is going to be, and actually I'm going to acknowledge Councilman Stokes for his work that he's done regarding succession planning and retention for our employees. This first question, Director Herbert, have you worked with city agencies that have a prevalent aging workplace and or a higher number of eligible retirees to proactively generate succession plans?
Yes, thank you for the question. We have been working in coordination with agencies, but not only those agencies, but we've been working with the employment retirement system. We've been working with the Baltimore City public school system and looking comprehensively at how we make plans for the future. IPMA HR did a comprehensive benchmark of public sector employers. 86% of those polled were municipal employers like Baltimore City, so it was an apples to apples benchmarking. And what they found was that 40% of the agencies represented could lose up to 20% of their staff within the next 5 years as a result of retirement. That notwithstanding, what the survey also uncovered was that 65% of those agencies do not have a succession plan in place. So we are beginning to turn the corner and get ahead of the curve by considering how we are planning for the future. One of the things that we're looking at is how do we build a bench. In building that bench, one of the critical tools in doing that is how we look at talent management. For far too long in the past, performance appraisals and performance reviews have been sporadic at best, and most of those are done by MAPS employees. What we're looking to encourage agencies to do and provide guidance around is how we can have more meaningful talent management, more meaningful performance appraisals, goal setting, and a way where we can adjudge those employees who have the ability to take on more responsibility and identify those next level leaders to begin transferring that knowledge and giving them more of that responsibility. So when the time comes, they have the ability to take over the reins and lead into the future. So we are identifying those positions and identifying those agencies that are having trouble and working with them to try to help them. And one of the things we are trying to encourage is that performance review process, that consistent talent management, because that is how you let employees know how they're doing. You're identifying additional training that they may need. You're giving them additional responsibilities to take on now to see how they do and kind of try to track that and build that bench for tomorrow.
Just as a follow-up, when is the final date of when the succession planning study and report going to be published so that the City Council would be able to review that information?
That report of the work that we did was recently turned over to the Mayor's Office of Government Relations. It will be socialized with the executive team and should be released within the next few weeks.
Okay. Thank you. I want to welcome our Vice President, Sharon Green Middleton. And I'm actually going to move to Councilman Stokes for his question, and then we're going to go to Councilman Schleifer.
Thank you. Director Herbert, the original date for the report was January of 2022. We knew that was kind of 60 days. We pushed it to 180 days. Now the report was supposed to have been done by May the 3rd, supposed to have been completed. Is the reason why it has not been done?
Yes, and thank you for the question, Councilman. The short answer is that I'd rather for the report to be right than fast, right? And so it was a comprehensive report that was not only the Department of Human Resources, but we were working with other stakeholders, employee retirement, fire and police retirement, Baltimore City Public Schools. I'm very proud of the work product that we've put together. It's quite comprehensive, and I think that you will appreciate the extra few weeks that it took to get that work product to you.
Well, it was more than a few weeks, but that's all right. So do you have a targeted date? Because January, now it's May, and now going into June. What is your actual date for the report to be, completed?
Again, as I indicated, when the bill was drafted, one of the things that we pushed back on was the January date. We were explicit that 60 days was simply not doable, and that all we would be able to do in 60 days would tell you the problem, which is to tell you what we already know, is that we need to do a better job of building the bench. We wanted more than that. We wanted a comprehensive look at how we can address fixing some of those systemic problems. And so we said 180 days.
Which is May the 3rd.
Exactly. And
June.
And as I said, the report was very recently turned over to the Mayor's Office of Government Relations, where it will be socialized with the mayor and the executive team, and I anticipate it being released within the next couple of weeks.
So I guess this committee, we have to go to Ms. Thimlis and ask for that report. That's where it is now in the mayor's office, government relations, or do you have it?
That's where it is now for review. I can't release it until I get the approval from the mayor's office to release it.
Well, Councilman, can that be a request that we get the report from the mayor's office of government relations, and then once you get the say-so to release it, then it should be able to come to this, maybe actually the whole council, not just a particular committee. So it's just a
Definitely.
request.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Sophia, can you note that we're requesting a date of when the mayor's office is going to be releasing that particular report? And that's going to be Councilman Stokes' request. We're going to be moving to Councilman Schleifer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Herbert, first I just want to thank you for all your work. I appreciate that when I reach out and have a question, you actually pick up the phone and you actually respond. And so I know that doesn't seem like something noteworthy, but unfortunately it is, and so I want to thank you for that. I don't have any questions because when I ask you a question, you answer them. But I do have just a couple of statements. The hiring in the city, and I know there's agencies involved. I know it's not all exclusively on HR, but you guys do play a role in it. You guys take the whole slogan of hiring slow and firing quick to a whole nother level. The hiring is very slow, and firing of people who need to be fired is virtually non-existent. And so I just wanted to put that out there so that you can just take that back to the team to just always try to figure out better ways, because we hear from constituents who apply for city jobs, and there's a ton of vacancies all over. And what we find often is that there's it just takes different time. By the time applications or people get to the actual agency to review, often takes time. So that's, we hear from agencies all the time that, hey, I don't even know about, these applications because we haven't gotten it from HR. And so I'm not asking you to go through the entire process now, but that is something that really needs to be improved so that we could start hiring people a little quicker once they've been vetted. And so any red tape you can remove from that process would be important in getting agencies to the proper staffing that they need. And then on the flip side, we also hear from supervisor level folks pretty much in every agency that have come across people who not interested in doing the job or are not really active, who really need either a career change or need to move on. And I think it's an honor to work for the city, and if you no longer want to work for the city and you are having trouble making that decision not to work for the city, We should be, empowering the agencies to be able to make those decisions to be able to get rid of people who are simply just not doing the job. And I think when people see that, and they see that you don't have unlimited job protection by working for the city, you have to perform your job in order to have job protection. I think that we'll see a big change in the performance in the city. And one thing that COVID, when we were all working from home, showed me was that in every agency you saw very clearly who does the work and who doesn't. Because there was employees who you would email on something, no matter what agency it was, and you would have a response in 15 minutes. And then there were some agencies you could literally email every single week for months and months, and then add supervisors to the list, and add more people to the list, and add more people to the email, until finally, at times, it even elevates all the way to the top. CAO Shorter knows what I'm talking about, because sometimes you had to even elevate to the CAO level. And frankly, employees who can't respond, just even with an answer, it doesn't have to be what we're looking for. If they're just not responding and not doing their job, they shouldn't be working for the city. And so I just would ask that you guys take a hard look at that and try to, improve both those functions on the way in and on the way out.
Thank you for that, Councilman. And I will just say that on the hiring side, and I'm not going to go through the whole process, but on the hiring side, there are things that the Department of Human Resources, as central HR, are responsible for. And then there are some things on the agency side that the agencies have to take responsibility for. For example, we cannot, on our own, put out a requisition or a posting unless the agency requests a requisition. So to your point about there being a number of vacancies, if we don't have a requisition in to post for those positions, we won't have a posting for those positions. Once we receive the list of employees who have, or candidates who have applied for a position, those are forwarded to the agency. We get requests routinely to extend the list because there was a delay in getting people in to be interviewed, and now the list is getting ready to expire, and for reasons such as that. So I agree, we as a whole need to, I think, do a better job of communicating, which we're working on doing that. With respect to the firing, I think that goes back to something that I mentioned earlier with the chair, that we are looking at how we can do a better job of talent management, because what you mentioned sounds to me like there's a supervisor that should be documenting that somewhere. That's a performance issue. If a person is tasked with responding to emails and responding to phone calls and communication, and they aren't doing that, that's a part of their annual performance appraisal. And that person shouldn't get a great and glowing performance appraisal if they aren't returning those phone calls and the like. So I think that talent management is critical for a number of reasons, not just the succession planning piece and identifying talent, but also in managing our current workforce and providing a certain level of service to not only our employees, but our constituents, to your point.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Vice President Middleton, and then we're going to go to Councilwoman Ramos.
Just two things. I first want to thank your offices, too, for your timely answers and answering concerns and helping with us as well as our fellow employees that work for Baltimore City. And I guess my question, I think maybe the Labor Commissioner can answer this. Just curious, I know that there's things happening over at water and wastewater. Is that affecting the apprenticeship program and the employees of Baltimore City that are in the program at water and wastewater? That's been a very successful, long-standing program. Just wondering.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. It may affect the apprenticeship program as far as training. We may have to change some of the courses, change the length of some of the courses, but we've initially met with the unions because I always say I don't like surprises, so therefore I try not to surprise people. So we had an initial meeting based on all the news stories, and we're having a follow-up meeting next week, and the goal, working with Director Mitchell, is to ensure that the unions and employees know exactly what's happening along the way. And if there are changes to the apprenticeship program, primarily for Local 44 and to a limited extent CUB, then obviously we'll involve the union when we have our apprenticeship meetings to talk about what changes need to be made.
And it's still is a state certified connection, and Michael Alexander is still
Yes,
the
ma'am.
person working with
Yes,
that.
ma'am. And we recently sent the Local 44 apprenticeship agreement. We updated it and sent it to the Board of Estimates about a month ago, and we're working on CUB now, so that can be updated as well.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director, and staff for being here. I have a couple of questions, and then, Madam Chair, I have a question from Councilman Burnett as well. My first question is, in a previous hearing, DPW had let us know that, they've been struggling with hiring. They had let us know that they've had to come to your office a couple of times to keep the postings up for more than 2 weeks. Is that something that, you've been doing for all of the agencies? Is that something that's normal? Have you thought about maybe changing the 2-week posting to a month posting so that there would be more time? Tell us a little bit about how you've sort of been adjusting to we need to hire people.
Sure, and thank you for the question. The 2-week period is the minimum that a posting can be up.
Okay.
So it's not that the post is only up for 2 weeks. What happens when the agencies come back to us, they are coming back asking us to extend the list. The list is good for 6 months. A list used to be good for a year, and what we found is that we would get to the bottom of the list, exhaust the list, and it wasn't fruitful for the agencies to have a list that long. The list would grow stale pretty quickly. So we shortened the life cycle of the list to 6 months. Agencies will often reach back out and request to extend the list for another 2 weeks or 2 months. And there are a host of reasons why they may do that. For example, agencies may say, we've conducted first interviews and we are going to have second interviews, but if the list expires, we can't hire off of this list. So we do that with every agency. I get probably, if I had to venture to guess, at least 10 to 12 requests a month to extend one list or another to accommodate an agency hiring. With that, I will say that as of 9:30 this morning, we have 12,641 employees. Our vacancies are at a little over 2,700, which is a 22% vacancy rate. I say that to put it in context. The average public sector vacancy rate ranges between 16 and 18%. So we're slightly higher than the vacancy rate of our peers. And while I do agree we need to fill these vacancies, I think that there's been a lot said about our vacancy report being extraordinarily high when that's simply not what the data tells us. Also, we have a 4% turnover rate, which industry standard is anything under 10% is normal. That tells us that we aren't losing people at a large clip. We are having trouble engaging people to come in, and we're working on creative ways on how we can better recruit top talent to come and work for Baltimore City.
And that's the major agencies, so it's DGS, DPW, housing,
That's
DOT.
across all the city. That's
Police as well are included in that?
the turnover rate, yes.
Okay. And so, okay, so maybe I misunderstood what Chief Moore Jackson said the other day, because she was very clear that she went back to you all, or whoever in DPW, to extend the posting. But that is different than what you're saying, which is, and that's fine, because you want to have a list of people that have sent in resumes and they just haven't gone through the whole list yet. And so 6 months is a long time, though. Don't you think that we should be hiring within 6 months?
In fact, many of the positions in DPW, most of them are what are called open and continuous postings. What that means is that those postings never come down. They're always on the website. What happens is we will produce a list, we'll send them the list, They begin to hire off of the list, and they will reach back out and say, can you extend this list for 3 months or for 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. So I did not hear Ms. Yvonne Moore Jackson's, what her concern was, but we work with those agencies on a daily basis.
She wasn't concerned, she was just saying a matter of fact, and
Yeah.
I was just trying to follow up to understand a little bit more. So, okay. And then, sort of staying on that, just adding the councilman's question about what are some of the other things that you're doing to, because we do have, even though it's a little bit higher than average, it's still a vacancy rate that is impacting services. So what are the other strategies that you're doing along with the agencies to try to recruit more people?
One of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is to leverage technology and leverage services like LinkedIn to buttress or to augment what we currently have through the city's website. And we've seen an increase in candidates. We've done more targeted recruitments. We also have partnered with other agencies. I'm very proud of an effort that we partnered with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development to do targeted recruitment events for agencies for their hard-to-fill positions. We looked at CDL drivers in the first cut and some other hard-to-fill positions, and I was proud to say that we hired quite a few people through that event. We offered conditional letters of employment on site to candidates. We filled positions from heavy equipment operators to engineers, to community health nurses. There were a whole host of positions that we were able to recruit and fill for through that strategic partnership with MOED. Those are the types of things that we're doing to again, augment what we're doing in the agency and to leverage, the power of one another to do a job of knocking down some of these vacancies.
So would you say that the vacancy rate is such because, sounds like we're getting recruits, but they're either not qualified or the agency isn't moving fast enough? What's going on?
There are a number.
I should also say we're probably not paying as much as we probably.
I was going to say there are a number of reasons why we may lose folks on the front end. It's one thing for a person to see that there's a vacancy in a position where they have competencies and they can do the job. It's something else when you're talking negotiation around what the salary will be. What we have seen, particularly in skilled trades and professionals, is that we do a good job on the front end at the very beginning of career. Where we tend to lose pace is mid-career and late career. And so many people that are coming to us and they're not at the entry level, they have some years of experience. When they hear what that salary is for a person that has 10 to 15 years of experience, they're like, thanks, but no thanks. And so we are working with our stakeholders at how we can strategically be more attractive to the types of candidates that we are looking to recruit. One of the things that we've been working with the Department of Finance and with some agencies, it's easier when there are classifications that are unique to an agency, because that agency can find it in their budget to make those adjustments, and we've done that in some instances. Where it becomes more difficult is where there are classifications that are throughout the agency. For example, a laborer. There are laborers in DPW, there are laborers in DOT, there may be some in DGS. And so if DPW can find money in their budget to increase the salary for laborers, the other agencies may not have that within their budget, and so that project is on hold. So we're looking at creative ways that we can help agencies to be more competitive with some of those classifications.
Yeah, I think the main concern is on the laborer side, especially with DPW at this point, and so that's a big issue. So I appreciate that. I have a couple more questions, but I can wait to the next round.
If I could, one other thing to add on to that question that touches that question. We've looked at this and what the data says around our ability to recruit, and salary is only one piece of the puzzle. What we found is that there are two things that rank almost as high as salary that people have said determines whether or not they accept a job or stay at a job. And those are working conditions and job flexibility. Job flexibility increasingly is becoming one of the greatest drivers in our ability to recruit and retain top talent. Folks want to have some input on how they do the work that they do, and that is not unique to us. That is across the market. I think that's something that COVID-19, one of the byproducts of COVID-19 is that people have realized that they can work remotely, they can work flex schedules and modified schedules, and that's something that folks, one of the first questions that we get from a lot of candidates around flexibility and how they perform their work.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're going to go to Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Director Herbert, you actually hit on the spirit of my question regarding mid to senior level supervisors, managers. Have there been any discussions about, at that level, folks recompeting for their position? And the reason why I bring that up is, really kind of ensuring that we align with not only the industry standards, but also with regard to technical acumen, professional acumen, and things that should be happening at these said levels. And so I know that there are a few cities that implement this, and so has there been any discussion in the city about that?
There has not, but that is something that we would look into.
Yeah.
And we would gladly continue those discussions.
Okay. And then my second question has to do with not only just the, on par with kind of industry standards, but also what are we doing as an agency to align salary and different amenities working for the city of Baltimore with other cities as well, similarly to like the city of Philadelphia, the city of Washington, the city of Washington, D.C., Austin, and some of those other prominent cities.
That's a great question. Thank you for the question. One of the things that we do when we conduct our compensation and classification surveys is we compare ourselves regionally, but then we also look at similar cities. So if you think about it this way, we look at how we compare to our surrounding jurisdictions. So Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County. But then we also look at what the Labor Commissioner will appreciate this. We call them the Amtrak cities. Mm-hmm. So we look at Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and then we look at similar cities. When I say similar cities, I mean cities that are similar economically, cities that are similar with median home prices, cities that are similar with respect to percentages of abject poverty, to ensure that we're looking at apples to apples. So we look at cities like Detroit, like Columbus, Ohio. Other cities that are comparable in number to us, Indianapolis, Indiana, is another one that we look at. And then we look across the board at all of those and comparing and say, where do we fall with respect to our surrounding counties? Where do we fall regionally along those Amtrak cities? And then where do we fall with cities that are dealing with similar struggles that we are in the city of Baltimore? And how then do we look at what a comparable salary should be? What we discover is that there are jurisdictions that are close to us that we will never compare with. Montgomery County, D.C. government, we just won't get there. What we are working with the Labor Commissioner to do is to look at how we have our grading system and how we grade employees. Right now, basically, there are pretty much, I think, 3 steps for most employees. Mm-hmm. And once you get to the top, that's it. We're looking at how we can better spread those out so that there are more opportunities throughout the life of the career. I can say that the Department of Finance has committed in the budget in fiscal year 23 to fund some of these classification and compensation studies so that we don't just provide good work and results or how bad it is, but that we can put some dollars behind that to get better. What I will say is that, like most problems that are systemic in our city, they did not occur overnight, and it will take us time to catch up. But we are committed to that work in the long haul. But again, to your point, it's not just looking at our surrounding jurisdictions. we have to look at cities that are similar to us as well.
And the only reason why I bring that up is because, you know, when we're talking about mid to level managers, I don't know if you have this data point off the top of your head, but like how many of our mid-level to senior level managers have their project management certification, their PMP? These are technical certifications that not only increase us within the labor market, but it also increases the talent that we are bringing into the city to better serve, you know, the constituency. And studies have shown that it will alleviate some of the work that most of our top-notch people, i.e., you know, some of them that are working here and in this chamber, that are overcompensating on a daily basis for those on their team that are not necessarily pulling their weight. So, and that will also hopefully increase our retention of employees as well, so they won't get burnt out. So,
And that's something that we advise agencies to look at as well. Because to your point, if we have folks with those certifications, you can do more with less, and that frees up some funding to do other things in terms of employee engagement. I think too, in getting at that, the way that we get there also is through employee engagement. I've seen the benefits of engagement surveys and then implementing engagement platforms and plans and what that has done, and just in the agency that I oversee and a couple of other agencies that were interested in doing it. And it's really eye-opening to see, you know, you can guesstimate about what will engage your employees, but there's nothing like having your employees tell you, this is what will engage me, this is what will stimulate me at work, this is what will get me, you know, fired up to work even harder, and then to implement and see an agency turn a corner. It speaks to the value of engagement, employee engagement.
thank you. Madam Chair, may I ask one more small question?
Sure.
Thank you. Director Herbert, can you speak to if every agency is required to have a professional development plan for every employee, whether they're going from entry level, mid-level to senior level, and what that looks like?
Currently, that is not in place. But again, as we go live with phase 3 of Workday, which has a talent management module, the goal is to have every employee to have a working annual plan that will have in it the training, certifications, additional responsibilities, right? And then what the challenge will be is that we then have to manage to that.
Yes.
And if we manage to that, then we will begin to see us turn that tide, and we'll begin to see that quality, that greater quality of output.
Okay, and so every agency is going to be using that module when
it will be in Workday. It'll be a module in Workday, and the CAO has been very instrumental in making this a priority. The mayor has made this a priority. We know that when we have meaningful talent management, when we let employees know where they are doing well, where we let them know where they're missing the mark, they'll self-correct. If we don't tell them where they're missing the mark, to the councilman's point, we want to march them out the door. And I think we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our employees to have a sustainable talent management platform where we're letting them know what the expectation is clearly, we're providing supports, and we are helping them to be those leaders that we are asking them to be.
Thank you. Also, just want to shout out Ms. Belinda Harris, who is an amazing person in your department. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Director Raymond in the earlier hearing this morning briefly spoke about phase 3 of Workday. You also just briefly talked about it. Can you give us more information about phase 3 in Workday and how that is going to assist us with recruitment and retention of our workforce?
Sure. The modules in phase 3 that are relative to human resources are learning and development, recruitment, and talent management. Talent management being the performance management. It's been called in the past. So annual assessments, goals, educational requirements, and the like. The recruitment piece will get us away from NeoGov, and we'll have everything housed in one system. So we will have everything that we need in one place. Also, Workday, there's an integration with LinkedIn that will allow us to be more nimble in how we move from the recruitment to the recommending that talent to the agencies. As Councilwoman mentioned, we have a phenomenal recruiter in Belinda Harris. Many of our leaders throughout the agencies were recruited by Belinda, which is a testimony to how those the investments in technology have afforded us the opportunity to be more targeted in our recruitment and to get people with the skill set to kind of lead our city into the future. The technological upgrades that Workday will provide in that space will make things more nimble, allow us to do that in one space as opposed to having multiple systems that may not speak well to each other. Things don't get transferred to the agency timely. It creates issues with respect to getting the talent in the door. And that technological update will allow us to do that, do a better job of that.
Okay, so we've spoken a lot about vacancies throughout our agencies. I want to talk about, and we know that there are vacancies, particularly for our MAPS employees. Can you give us more information and update on MAPS pay for performance programs, and if funding is going to be allocated in each agency's budget for raises this year?
Yes, pay for performance it's usually thought of with performance management, although they are separate. Pay for performance is placed in the budget or funded by finance. If it's funded in the year, we will have the pay for performance. Last year it was not in the budget, this year it is. What that does is that those MAPS level employees who are high performers have the ability for an increase. That is done at the agency level. In order to qualify for pay for performance, the employee must have had a performance plan and must have had the mid-year evaluation and a final evaluation and must have a score above 3 to qualify. Agencies in the past have been given the autonomy to determine whether they wish to offer a bonus to employees, which is a one-time bonus, which is usually a bigger chunk of money, or an adjustment to base, which would be a lower raise, but it would be factored into your overall salary. So for example, the last time that we did pay for performance, some agencies opted to give all of those MAPS employees who had a 5 or a 4, a 0.5% raise. Those who had a 3 got like a 2%, a 0.2% raise, and then there were some that got bonus. Some agencies opted to do bonuses because they were able to give $1,500 or $2,000 per employee as a one-time bonus. So that has been in the past left up to the agencies to determine how they disperse the money that goes to their agencies from pay for performance.
Thank you. We're going to go to Councilman Conway, and then we'll be going to Councilman Stokes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Director Herbert. I appreciate the great work you've been doing, and it's certainly been a tough time. I know we talked about this a little bit, and I'm going to dig into it a little more because I know it's pretty important, that being vacancies. We had a couple of hearings with DPW talking about vacancies across both solid waste and water and wastewater. In different divisions, they had varying levels of vacancies. I know you mentioned earlier our vacancies across the entire city is about 22%, about 2,700 positions. DPW is struggling with somewhere around 29, near 30%, in a few different areas. I know we're doing everything we can to begin to tackle that problem. We've talked about salaries, we've talked about flexibility, we've talked about a number of other options. I'm curious, are we prioritizing or working with the agencies to prioritize positions that we know are key, knowing that that has significant impacts on certain operations? Is that something that we've been thinking about?
Yes, we do. And in fact, our recruitment team works with agencies to develop what we call them hard to fill positions. And those are the positions that are critical, that are currently vacant, and that agencies have been struggling to fill. And so each agency has a number of them that they have identified as these are our critical must-fill positions. And those are our priority from a recruitment standpoint. So to your question, yes, we are having those discussions with every agency. We do have a hard-to-fill list, and then we work with the agencies to post for those vacancies and to try to make those recruitment priorities.
Can I make that an official request? Can you provide that list to us of the number of positions? I'm just curious what those positions are. If there's anything I can do to help us fill those positions, I know it would be helpful for the city and hopefully helpful for you guys. How often do we meet with agency heads, division heads, and otherwise to think about these priorities as we, see attrition and otherwise? How often do we meet with them?
How often?
How often do we meet with agency heads or division heads to reprioritize?
One of the things that we started even before COVID was we have bi-weekly meetings with all of the agency HR practitioners. So these are the people in the agencies who would know where the priorities are, what vacancies are a priority, and what support is needed from Central DHR to assist. So we have those meetings bi-weekly. Chief Ashton, who is here, our Chief of Classification and Compensation, leads those discussions. And it's not just recruitment based, right? So recruitment is one of the things that we assist with, but also some other operational pieces that agencies may struggle with. We're there to provide those support and those services. So I would say we meet twice a month with those folks. And if there are key recruitment needs that need to be prioritized, I would say that we have an open door policy. I meet with Director Mitchell. We have a standing weekly meeting where we kind of have that FaceTime to talk about those issues, whether it be recruitment, whether it be working conditions, whether it be how he can engage employees, whether it be compensation. We're meeting on a weekly basis to have those discussions.
That's great. And then
Council, before you start, could you repeat the request so we can...
the request was to get a list of the highly prioritized
Hard-to-fill vacancies.
Hard-to-fill vacancies. And off the top of your head, roughly how many positions is that? Do we have a sense?
If you give me a second, I think I have it somewhere here. It's about 35 to 40 classifications that are hard to fill.
And that's across the whole city?
That's across the whole city.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I'll ask this last question. So I was looking back, because of course there was some coverage on our vacancies at the city level, I think back in August of 21. And at the time, we'd been quoted at 25% vacancy rate across positions across the city, and roughly 3,400 positions. We've gotten that down, which sounds amazing. I'm curious, what were some of the things that we've done to get that progress, and are we continuing to see yields from those changes?
I think that one of the things that we have done is to be more targeted in our approach. One of the things that, again, I tout, we had a couple hundred new hires as a result of that partnership with MOED. Using our existing, relationships with other city agencies to kind of come on board and to help us to fill those vacancies. That was I think a big push, and we've actually continued that. We now have quarterly events with MOED where we've been reaching out to agencies and asking them, what are your critical needs? Tell us what the skills and competencies are that you need. We then share those with MOED, and MOED, through their connections, find the talent that have those competency, skills, and training that want to work for the city of Baltimore, and we put them in front of the agencies and fill those vacancies. And I think that also, quite frankly, filling some of these vacancies has become a priority across the enterprise. There are agency heads are more cognizant of the need to fill these vacancies now, that we can no longer do more with less. We need to use what we've been allotted to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So I think it's a couple of things that have afforded us the opportunity to make a dent. I think that as we continue with the partnership with MOED, that for some of those hard to fill positions, particularly in DPW and the health department, we'll continue to see gains.
Thank you, Director. And I have one question, if Madam Chair will let me sneak this in. Quickly, do you know how long it takes us from the moment that an agency decides they want to fill a position, they send the requisition to you guys? How long does it typically take to fill a position?
It varies. It depends on a number of factors. When we get the requisition, we have the position up pretty quickly. The position has to stay up for a minimum of 10 days. Once we compile the list, we send the list to the agency. At that point, you have some agencies that already have their interview panel selected when they send the requisition. Some agencies, once they get the list, they get their interview panel together, they begin to schedule interviews. It varies. It varies wildly. There are some agencies that from requisition to position fill, we've had that done with some agencies in a matter of weeks. Some agencies, it's longer. So it depends. There are a number of factors that contribute to how long it takes from requisition to hire, what that time frame is.
Sure. It would be, I guess this is a kind of consideration for BBMR. It may be something we want to consider tracking going forward, just so we can always kind of keep ourselves honest and know roughly what we're dealing with when it takes time to fill these positions. Of course, different positions take different amounts of time if you need more technical expertise, but I'd be curious if that's something that we can begin tracking going forward.
If it's okay, Director, there is a performance measure in Service 772 that focuses specifically on DHR's portion of this. And I think previously, correct me if I'm wrong, Director, it was more broadly defined to talk about that start to end, but because DHR can only influence that portion where it comes to them, it was narrowed in that way. So I think there is certainly a broader conversation we can have about how to measure that, but for DHR to have an impact, it's only in that one spot where they actually interact with it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Herbert, first of all, I want to thank your staff and you. I know we had ransomware, then we had COVID, and I know y'all were going through a lot, so I want to at least acknowledge your staff. I know y'all been through a lot. But I want to mention Director Chichi, when she came on the DGS, she looked at morale and over at DGS and how you can save money for that particular agency. Am I correct, Director Chichi? And it changed morale. One is our sanitation and our water and wastewater employees. You know, during COVID, we always heard about the nurse and the doctor in the hospital, but nobody acknowledged those employees who were coming to work every day, probably catching COVID, taking it home, and then sometimes you probably hear a lot of community people complain about my trash didn't get picked up, my recycling didn't get picked up, because we had a short staff. And CAO Shorter was here the other day, and we talking about we have a shortage of CDL drivers. You know, they come and get the training, 11, 12 hours an hour, then they're gone. And I think we should be looking at how do we now, you know, put some more salary in the CDL drivers so we can retain those drivers. And I know CA Shorter talked about that a couple of days ago in here, and I think we should look at that because we have good employees, but as long as they're only making 11 or 12 hours an hour as CDL drivers, we're gonna always have a shortage in the city, and not just those particular positions, but throughout the city. So it's just a recommendation, but I think we need to put more money and find out, because there's a lot of the morale in some agencies with city employees is not good, you know. So I was just mentioning what Director Chichi did when she came to DGS, and I believe it changed a lot of the morale in a particular agency. That's something we should look at, morale for our city employees, because they do work hard and they don't always get credit. And you know, constituents call and they complain about stuff, but I know for a fact, because during COVID, I was able to have free lunch to those sanitation workers and the DPW workers, because I think they deserve that. They didn't get knowledge, but we were able to do that through the Franciscan Center, who gave them free lunches. And still today, they still thank me for that and thank Franciscan Center. So I'm only talking about the recruiting in terms of the hourly wage for our CDL drivers, and how do we now, because of the some of the agencies, the morale's low, we need to start looking at that also.
Thank you for that, Councilman. And I will say that goes back to something that I mentioned earlier about employee engagement. And Deputy CAO Niaga Nash was in DHR when we began to implement things that we learned from our engagement survey. We saw that morale was the dip in morale was related to specific things in the agency, and it allowed us to target those things. Sometimes there's a tendency to just make pay the end-all be-all, and that pay is the only driver. What we found is that pay wasn't a driver at all in the morale dip in our agency. One of the major drivers for lower morale was lack of communication. And so it made it an opportunity for us to turn what we learned about that low morale into real targeted strategy to change the narrative. And now the morale has done a U-turn without having to increase salary to anybody, because they told us why the morale was where it was, right? And so I hear you. I think that it speaks to what I said earlier, that we need to look at more targeted engagement surveys across the city. Believe me, if you ask the employees what would engage you to come to work and make you want to work harder, they will tell us. And then it's on us to take that data and how do we use it to really see incremental change across the enterprise. Well,
I'm glad that they feel that way, but the other way they feel is they want some increase in their salary. So I know that for a fact. We hear it all the time. So I'm glad that part of the morale's there, but everybody like an increase in their salary. So don't leave that out, please. Okay, Councilwoman Odette Ramos.
Folks,
Mr.
if
Chair.
everyone could speak a little more, or not to you directly, Councilwoman Ramos, but for everyone, if you could speak a little more directly in the microphone. Folks that are watching it at home can't hear, or it's cutting in and out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, again. Two questions. One came from earlier in the day. We were talking about the risk management and drug testing, and I just wanted to confirm that we did change our policy around testing for marijuana. Is that correct? That upon hiring?
That is correct. For those who are being hired into non-safety sensitive classes,
Okay.
we do not test for marijuana in the pre-employment drug screening phase. That is only applicable to those who are applying in what are classified as safety-sensitive classifications.
So like CDL drivers and police officers and that kind of thing? Is that what
That's
we're looking
correct.
at?
There is a list of the safety-sensitive classifications in the at the end of the substance abuse control policy. There's a list of all of the safety-sensitive classifications throughout the city.
And then we were talking earlier about with risk management that they're periodically also then tested.
There are certain classifications, again, they're safety sensitive, that are subject to random drug testing. Particularly, most prevalently are our CDL drivers who fall under DOT regulations. They are subjected to random urinalysis, and the battery of drug screening is mandated by federal government for them, and so we don't touch that.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear. Thank you so much for that. And then second question, unrelated, under Service 771, page 307 in the first book. It says that the service didn't meet the target for percentage of employees engaging in the wellness programs due to restrictions, and anticipating, the service anticipates that in-person events, even in-person events, will be something that people don't want to participate in. Are you going to be doing some virtual events? I know that there's been some virtual trainings, but I just want to make sure that, you know, people's needs are met, and that you're offering various trainings for folks in different ways, because in person may not be, as you said, the way we want to go here.
That's correct. We are doing virtual wellness events. In fact, we partner with agencies all the time. We currently have a partnership with the Comptroller's Office, where they're doing a comprehensive wellness program, which is primarily virtual. We recently had a partnership with Trek Bikes, where we had a bike giveaway last week, encouraging employees to bike to work. And then our core wellness programs, we have continued those throughout the pandemic virtually. Our tobacco cessation program, our nutrition program, we see approximately 45 to 50 folks a month for tobacco cessation. We see about 70 people per month. Our nutritionist sees about 70 employees per month, which those types of programs do have a direct impact on our employee wealth and health, and they impact our health benefit as well. We know that for a smoker, the average cost of health insurance for a smoker, it's about 15 or 20% more than that of a non-smoker. So each employee that we get in the door for that tobacco cessation program that completes it and then continues to remain a non-smoker, that has a very positive impact on our health benefit costs on the back end. For each employee that sees a nutritionist that may be struggling with obesity or diabetes, we know that we have an overall unhealthy work population. A number of employees have diabetes or are obese. Our nutritionist helps them with diet plans, checks in on them, follows up with them. As we see more employees utilize that service, again, it has a positive impact on the overall health and well-being of our employees.
So you're doing then some of these, obviously working with a nutritionist is sometimes something that has to be done in person, but it doesn't sound like it's a big group effort, right? So you're trying to, because it says that the target was down, you know, even for 22, I mean, obviously for COVID, but, you know, I thought that you might have already switched to doing some virtual.
We're doing some virtual. Before COVID, we had a very robust, you know, Zumba class. We had other things throughout the city that required employees to inquire groups, congregate settings, right? So you're coming to a venue to work out, and those things have not come back because as we continue to cycle through our response to COVID, they just have not come back, and there hasn't been an appetite from employees to bring those back just yet. But there have been virtual wellness initiatives. We've partnered with our health vendors that have provided videos and other, health and wellness initiatives for our employees to engage in. We have some incentives. They're incentivized in some instances. And so we have seen some employees take advantage of that, but not at the level pre-COVID.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Real quick, Director Herbert, I just want to bring your attention back on April the 4th. I was on my way to Mayor Scott's State of the City, and I was riding up Washington Street and got to Lafayette. Somebody ran a stop sign, and if I didn't go in the other lane, they actually almost knocked the driver's side of the passenger door off the car, $10,000 worth of damage. When I left there, I went to Mercy. You know what they told me? Well, you don't have a police report. We can't wait on you. And that's what's in place right now. The only reason why they came back out, but when I went in, I told them, showed them the picture of the car. They said, we can't wait on, fill out everything. Say, we can't wait on you because you don't have a police report. If you just left an accident, why are they asking me or any city employee for accident report, not a police report, an accident. And the only reason why they came back and got me because I was a councilman. But what about if I'm not a councilman? What about just a regular employee? We need to go back and look at that because how many other city employees came there, were in an accident, and they said, well, you need an accident report. I mean, they didn't take no x-rays, absolutely nothing. So that's something that I think that's in place that probably the risk management need to go back and look at. But I just want to bring it to your attention. I guess if I were an elected official, I would have went on home. They came back outside to get me, but it's something that, you know, I was telling a lady, well, if my leg is hanging off from an accident, I got to give you an accident report. How do you do that when you're coming straight from an accident? So I just wanted to put that out and maybe go back and look at that process. Thank you. Any more Council Vice President Middleton?
Just one additional question. I apologize if you already answered this when I stepped away. We have a number of employees that have reached, 62 and over and are still working long and strong. And do you have seminars or sessions on how and when to apply for your Social Security because they're eligible? Just going through that whole process, are there seminars that you have quarterly or?
They aren't offered through the Department of Human Resources, but the Employment Retirement System.
The retirement system
Offers
has
them.
those kinds of seminars, and it includes the information that you discussed, how to apply for Social Security, planning for retirement, managing your deferred comp, and those types of things. I think they're held on a monthly basis, and we provide administrative leave so that employees can attend.
So you would refer them if they call your office?
To the ERS.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Director Herbert, Madam Labor Commissioner, thank you very much. Appreciate everything. Do a great job. We're now in recess until
Thank you, sir.
2 p.m.